Hello everybody, my name is Dietrich, and today I'm going to make a video to teach you how to use the paddle shifters in a modern car. The paddle shifters are these paddles behind the steering wheel. This happens to be a 2025 Mercedes CLA 250, and this is a typical layout. You have a plus on the right side and a minus on the left side. So what do these do? Well, they control what gear the transmission is in, or in the case of a CVT transmission, they control what gear the computer is simulating the transmission to be in, but the net effect is the same. So why would you ever use these things? Well, number one is just to mess around and have fun. Originally, paddle shifters debuted on Formula One cars in the early 90s to control the, at the time, new sequential manual gearboxes. So they're meant to be kind of sporty in that way. The first car with what they call a Tiptronic automatic transmission would have been a Porsche in the 1980s. So you can have fun with it. You can control what gear you're in and hear wah, meh, meh, or meow, meow, meow. If you like hearing engine noises, that's one thing that you can do with it, okay? Most people watching this video, that's maybe not what you're gonna do with it. What are the practical applications? So the reason why you would use these in the real world, in my opinion, is either going uphill or downhill. You use it going uphill to select a lower gear with the minus paddle to make sure that you have enough power to go uphill, especially if you have a heavy load in the car, if you're towing something, or if your car simply doesn't have very much horsepower and you want to make sure that the engine is able to pull you up the hill, or if you want to prevent the transmission from what they call hunting when you're going up the hill. That's when you keep hearing the transmission shift or feeling it shift. It's hunting through the gears to try to find the power that you're looking for by hitting the gas pedal. So that's another reason why you might use the paddle shifters going uphill. Going downhill, you would do the same thing, but for a different reason. You'd use the minus paddle shifter to hold a lower gear so that you don't have to use your brakes as much. When the engine is at higher RPMs, it does something called compression braking. So the car kind of slows down a little bit more on its own. It's actually the engine not allowing the gravity to make it accelerate as much. And that way you don't have to use your brakes as much. And again, this is handy if you are towing or hauling a heavy load, so that you don't burn your brakes out, or if your car doesn't have very good brakes and it's a very long kind of downhill grade. That way you won't pick up too much speed by the bottom and you'll be able to stop. And then the third reason that you would use the paddle shifters, and again, you'd use it to probably hold a lower gear, would be in limited traction conditions. I'm talking about icy roads, snowy roads, or even dirt roads, especially going downhill once again, so you don't pick up too much speed on the way down and you can control where, you know, how fast you're going without hitting the brake, because it's not always a great thing to be slamming on the brakes when you're going downhill on an icy road. So I'm unable to demonstrate that because I am in Southern California, and on December 2nd, we have a beautiful sunny 74-degree day. So I don't have any ice to demonstrate that with, but it's basically the same thing as when you go downhill. Just hit the minus to control what gear you're in. When I drive a car with paddle shifters in the snow, I always use them. So how do we use them? Well, in most modern cars, and I'm going to kind of generalize here because this is for everybody, not just Mercedes-Benz drivers. In most modern cars, if you hit the paddle shifter while you're just driving and drive, it will accept your input and it'll change gear, but then typically after about 30 seconds, it will just revert back into drive. The reason why it does that is to save fuel. So you may have to put the car into a sport mode or a manual mode to get it to actually hold the gear and actually make the paddle shifter useful. So what you're probably seeing on the screen right now is video of a bunch of different shifters of cars that I've filmed over the years, showing how to put it in and out of sport mode. Typically it's right after you go into drive. You can either push it over towards the driver, over towards the passenger, down one click. As a rule of thumb, the sport mode might be there. If it's got a push button transmission and says D/S, like on an Acura or a Honda, just push that button to toggle through it. On this particular car, it's actually in the touchscreen. So on this Mercedes, if I hit the little car right here, I go into some controls and I can push that to go into the manual shifting. So that's what I have to do to be able to have the paddle shifters actually hold the gear and be useful for what I need them to do in this car. So with all that being said, let's go get on the road and try it out. So here we go. I'm gonna push my M for manual shifting, and I'm starting to go uphill now. If it's a little bit of a fisheye lens view, I apologize about that. I'm trying to make it so you can see what my hands are doing. So I am going to hit my minus paddle shifter a couple of times. I'm now in 6th gear. This car has 8 gears, so your gear count may vary. But now I have more power to go up the hill. I'm currently going uphill a little bit, and it's holding that 6th gear. If I took it out of the manual mode, then it would probably downshift to 8th, and if I needed some power to keep going, then it would have to kind of hunt through the gears. And so it's a little bit cleaner when you're going uphill to use the paddle shifter. Again, it's not necessary all the time. That's just one practical use for it. Now, it's probably more useful going downhill, which is what we're about to do. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put it in top gear, which is 8th gear. So my engine at 71, 72 miles an hour is doing about 1,700 RPM. So the car is just rolling now, and it's going to kind of just go faster if I let it go. But if I hit minus, now it's actually slowing down a little bit. I went from 73 to 72 to 71, and if I keep hitting it, the engine RPM is going to go up, which means that I have more braking. So now I'm down to 68. I don't have my foot on the gas or the brake. I'm down to 66. So I'm actually slowing down while I'm going downhill, and I'm going to upshift and go a little bit faster. So the higher the engine RPM, if it's holding the gear, the slower you're going to go down the hill. And again, this is good so that you don't have to burn out your brakes. And if you're on an icy hill, you won't end up going too fast, and you don't need to hit the brakes and potentially skid. So that's, to me, the biggest thing that the paddle shifters are useful for. And you may wonder, if you've never used them before and you do this, one thing you're going to notice when you make the engine hold a higher RPM because you're making the transmission hold a lower gear, oh my God, my engine's making all kind of noise. Is it going to blow up? Well, probably not, but the thing that would make me say it's definitely not going to blow up is if you do your maintenance correctly. I'm talking about oil changes, coolant flushes, transmission services. That's where all that stuff comes into play, because you are putting a little bit more stress on the drivetrain by making it hold higher RPM for the engine and a lower gear for the transmission, so that you don't have to use your brakes as much. And some people might say, well, replacing brakes, brake pads, and brake rotors is cheaper than replacing engines and transmissions. Well, yes, that is true, but in my opinion, as a driver, and specifically as a driver with a lot of experience in a lot of different conditions, I prefer using compression braking going downhill, because I feel like it puts me in more control. The problem with using your brakes, let's say you're coming down a long grade, you're coming down the Grapevine, or, you know, it's 5 or 6 miles of pure downhill, right? And you keep using your brakes to slow down. You keep using your brakes to slow down. What happens is the brakes heat up. As they heat up, they become less effective, so they don't work as well. And it's easier for me as a driver to just put the car in a lower gear and not have to use my brakes as much, and make sure that I'm doing my oil changes, my coolant flushes, my transmission flushes, you know, all that stuff on time. I'm a big proponent of preventative maintenance on an automobile, because I do think it can prevent a lot of those kind of issues. So that's the basics on how to use the paddle shifters. And if you want to use them to screw around, you just whack minus a couple of times. Now I'm down into 5th, and I got all kind of power. And then I upshift, and then I upshift, and then I don't want to go too fast. So if you want to have fun, making your car make noise with a switch, that the paddle shifters can do that too. So anyway, that's my basic how-to on how to use your paddle shifters in your vehicle. I hope that I gave you enough knowledge to kind of know what you're looking for as far as going into the manual to find what you need. If you can't figure out how to engage it on your car, you're looking for like the manual shift mode is what you want, because it does engage a little bit differently, and I'm just not going to make a video on how to use paddle shifters on every single automobile. So anyway, if you do have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments. I'll do my best to answer it for you. Please like my video and subscribe to my channel, and please have a great day. Bye-bye.